My name is Chris C, and I'm making a game called Nectar. Nectar is a science fiction 3D puzzle platformer with knowledge-based progression, inspired by games like Outer Wilds, Animal Well, and Journey. To navigate the world, you must learn how to control a mysterious substance called nectar, to grow plants, solve puzzles, and manipulate the world, all while uncovering a long-lost history of a robot civilization. In my last video, I talked about the disconnect between what my game is and what people think my game is. Most people didn't realize that Nectar was a science fiction game, and one of the factors that caused this disconnect is the lack of robots in my devlogs. My game will have sci-fi elements, but a lot of those assets have not been created yet, so I haven't showed them off yet. As a result, my devlogs have mostly showcased the more naturey side of the game, and because of this, people understandably thought it was a cozy, lighthearted game. And while the intention isn't to make Nectar super dark and gritty and realistic, it will have slightly darker sci-fi elements to it. Again, not too dark. I think I did over-exaggerate a little bit with how dark I planned on making it, but it will have some slightly darker elements. So to convey this side of the game more clearly, I've shifted some of my development focus towards the sci-fi parts of the game. I finally modeled and rigged one of the robots. It's one of the things I've been meaning to do for a long time. I had concept art for these robots months ago, so it's good to finally get them modeled. Speaking of the robots, one of the major things I wanted to work on is the primary way I plan on feeding information to the player. It has to do with the robots, so there will be hints of an entire robot civilization from the past, but the game itself will focus specifically on 4 robot characters. These characters have died a long time ago, but all of the robot technology still remains, and throughout the world the player will stumble upon these large monitors that they'll need to restore power to. With power restored, these monitors will display conversations between the 4 primary robot characters, and these conversations will be displayed through this fictional chat application that they've been using. Through their conversations, I plan on revealing story beats from the past, as well as information about how the world works, and hint at various puzzle mechanics. I've mentioned before that Outer Wilds is a huge inspiration for me. These chat conversations will function in a very similar way to Outer Wilds. I briefly teased these monitors in my previous video, but now I can go more in depth in how they work and my process for building them. So these chat conversations will be scattered all throughout the world. There will be a lot of them, and I need an easy way to implement and organize pages and pages of text. I figured the easiest way to do that was with Excel. So I'll be writing all these text chats in Excel, and then I'll be finding a way to convert those Excel files into Unreal in a usable manner. So there are 2 components to building this chat. The first is the functionality of it, so converting the text from the Excel file into something usable in Unreal, and displaying that text on an in-game monitor. And then the second part of it is the visual part, so making the text look like an old abandoned chat application that these robot characters would be using. So I started with the functionality of it, just to see if I could get the basic text working. Now, I knew creating this would involve widgets, and widgets are one of my biggest weak spots in my skill set, but I figured this was a good excuse to learn. Eventually, I'll need to rebuild the menus in the game, and my lack of experience with widgets is one of the reasons I haven't done that yet. But this little robot chat widget thing is a good way for me to practice and get more familiar with how widgets work. And another way to learn about widgets and menu creation in Unreal is with the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for all creatives, with thousands of classes led by industry experts across not just game development, but also film, illustration, graphic design, photography, music, etc. Whether you're picking up a new hobby from scratch, or you're attempting to sharpen an existing skill, Skillshare has classes for beginners and experts alike. Skillshare has a learn by doing approach, which I have always believed to be the best way to learn. Members can create and share projects after completing a class to get feedback from the community to improve their skills. One class in particular that has caught my eye is this one about character UI creation in Unreal Engine, which is a comprehensive look at the creation of widgets and menus. Click on the link in the description to join Skillshare and gain access to thousands of classes to boost your creative ambitions. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. So what do I need in terms of functionality for this robot chat system? I want to take the Excel file, drop it into Unreal, and feed that text into a widget to display onto a monitor. I've never dealt with the dialogue system or anything like that before, so I had to experiment. I came up with a system that I'm pretty happy with, but leave a comment down below if you have a better way of doing things. The way I decided to do it is with data tables. So my Excel file is separated into different columns to make it easier to extract information once it's in the engine. I convert the Excel file into a CSV file and I import that CSV file into Unreal. And then in Unreal, I can create a data table and link it with the data from that CSV. I throw that data table into a widget, and within my widget blueprint, it pulls information from the data table and formats the text in the widget accordingly. It adjusts the colors based on the character, and it even displays an avatar icon specific to the character. These are just placeholder icons, I haven't made the real ones yet, but that's how it will work. And this works exactly how I want it to. Now I can add chat entries in the Excel file, re-import them into Unreal, and they'll pop up in the widget. If I need to change anything or fix a typo, I just revise the Excel file and re-import, and everything updates automatically. For the organization of these conversations, I plan on naming each Excel file based on the level that they'll appear in, with a numerical system. That way I can easily keep track of which conversation goes where, and I can swap them if I need to. With the functionality working, now I can work on the visuals. I drafted up a layout in Photoshop, I experimented with a few different layouts, and eventually I ended up with something that I'm happy with. I then created a logo for this fictional app, which I'm calling Bloom. I may change that later, but for now, I kinda like how it looks and sounds. And then I played around with some effects to overlay on top of the image to make it more dynamic. I added this CRT effect, as well as some slight chromatic aberration. And since this technology has been abandoned, I want the image to look deteriorated. I found this scrolling static video and I combined it with this other scrolling static texture to create this staticky image type of thing. I also added a slight distortion effect at the edges and applied a radial gradient to the background color. And lastly, I animated the Bloom logo to slowly rotate, just for a little more motion. And this is the final result. I really like how it came out. I still need to work on the hardware design. The models I'm using for the monitor and computer right now are kind of just placeholders, but the widget itself is at a point that I'm happy with. Overall, I think this was a very good way for me to practice using widgets. Now I'll just need to create my whole menu system before I forget all this widget knowledge. But that's a topic for a future video. If you want to learn more about this game as I continue development, hit subscribe for future Nectar devlogs. Thanks!